And our next speaker is Katharina Habersbrunner, who is representing Bündnis Bürgerenergie, the German Community Power Alliance. Katharina, it's a pleasure having you. I understand that you're now based in Munich and presenting us the situation in Germany, which is not the first, but I think it's the biggest community power country in Europe in terms of number of people involved in these projects. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you see my screen?
Yes, and we can.
Very good. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's really very inspiring to listen to all of you, to listen to your stories and the experience. So it's very inspiring in times of crisis. Yes, in Germany, once upon a time, it used to be a very nice country for renewable energy and for power community, for citizen communities. We see here, the first slide is just, I wanted to share the share of renewable energy of the monthly power production, which is rather impressive, and it's increasing. You see the last year, so that's one part of the success story in Germany. You see here mainly the production of wind and photovoltaic. And you said maybe Germany, Stefan, maybe Germany is not the biggest player of community energy. Regarding these numbers, I got out of a study of 2019. So in Germany, we have about 1,750 energy communities. So energy cooperatives, stock exchange companies, organizations, trust funds. So that's rather impressive. So I hope, I guess the numbers are correct. I didn't study myself, but just also to show that regarding the numbers, the community energy is a big player. And what are the main actors are, of course, energy cooperatives. It's already mentioned, so that they have, it's a broad diversity of the business model. So they starting, for example, with the energy cooperatives in Germany with our Renewable Energy Act 2000. So the first renewable energy cooperatives, they started to produce photovoltaic and wind. So mainly production and generation, and now we see that they have really a broad range of business model and also doing trading and distribution, so being also some of them really energy utility companies. And it's also in terms of technologies, the structure and ownership, which was explained in the beginning by Stefan. So it's a high diversity, and what we also see, it's really there is a very high expertise on community power. So it can be, and it is a great base for a decentralized energy transition. In Germany, so we see mainly three models on self-consumption and energy communities. Of course, it's a very starting point with the self-consumption in your house, where now it's also allowed to use the energy at home and to feed in the surplus into the grid. The second example is a collective self-consumption, because that was a long discussion on social justice, not only to enable people owning real estate to be able to become a prosumer. Now we have in Germany the so-called tenant electricity law, which allows the so-called collective self-consumption. It's a very nice concept, and it would have a very big potential. But unfortunately, the concept is designed in a rather bureaucratic way and with a lot of levies and additional costs. So it's not a success story, but we hope there will be a revised version by our ministry soon. We will see. And of course, we have the energy communities where citizens can become a member, and they run, for example, the big wind power plants and also the field solar power plants and other technologies, and offer many services, grid operation, as I mentioned before. But what is the dilemma of community energy in Germany? Starting with a very positive development. So it's the decentralized energy transition, so it's mainly a technological framing. So we see that many people are very engaged in the energy transition, in the decentralized energy transition, but we see that it's very difficult really to meet the needs of all the people. Sometimes we are in a silo and we don't reach all the people. That's the one point. The second point is that regarding the last studies, that really more than 90% of the citizens are pro-energy transition. So really we need the energy transition, and almost 90% are say we have to speed up. So we have to speed up till 2030, for example. And all this awareness and attitude of the pro-citizenship is not reflected in a progressive energy policy. For example, the Renewable Energy Directive, so the clean energy package mentioned by Dirk. So we have to transpose it into German law, and we do not see any legislative activities of our government. Even if there would be really great features for citizen energy in, for example, in the Renewable Energy Directive, in one of the directives. That's, yeah. And for solar, for example, so we have a so-called solar energy cap. So that's a rule. It's in our Renewable Energy Act. If we reach the 22 gigawatt installation of solar, there won't be any support for solar energy power plants in the frame of the Renewable Energy Act. And so we are so close to the gap, and so there is no regulation. The government does not have any rules and communication on it. And so that's, yeah, that's really also a mess. On wind, it was also mentioned by Stefan before. So it was 2016, 2017. So they introduced the tender for all wind projects, without any exemption for small projects. And so that was really came with a steep decline in community energy project, because it's a very high risk for community energy or for energy communities to have also risk capital to do the planning. So that was also is still a big problem. And last point, we have our Renewable Energy Act, which used to be a success story. As mentioned, it started 2000, and now we have the first power plants being post Renewable Energy Act. And there is no regulation at all how to deal with the wind and solar power plants after 2020. And so that's unsure if you can use the energy, if you can sell it, what is the price for selling and for trading. So that's really, we see a lot of campaigns now in Germany working on it, and we hope that the government will become active on this point. So the point is how to unleash the community power. And yes, one point is energy sharing as a way out of the dilemma. So, and the energy sharing is regulated in one article of the Renewable Energy Directive. So to have really, to be able to do energy sharing within communities, with public grid, or also without public grid, so with an own grid. But it needs a strong and ambitious transposition of the energy package and of the Renewable Energy Directive. And yeah, so one point is that the experts are discussing that the implementation into the German energy system is challenging. So we are looking where to allocate it. But anyhow, it needs political power, so it would be possible. And we as Bündnis Bürgerenergie, as an umbrella association for citizen energy, we request here for reduced levies, for a fair pricing for network charges and for taxes. So to push again, for example, wind and solar power plants. So that could be one part. And what we also need, it's also mentioned, for example, by Dirk, it's like sub-targets for community power. So really binding targets for energy communities. That's very important. And to have that energy communities, really, there is a favorable framework. So for self-consumption, for example, we have to pay additional costs. So to revise these rules also. And supporting renewable energy communities, it's not only to be financially supported, but not to make it too difficult, for example, to set up energy cooperatives, which is not the point because people are experienced to establish energy cooperative if it would be a good framework. What is also very important to the energy responsibility, because decentralized energy means more actors. So it means really that the new actors, they are able to talk to the politicians. And that's my last point here on this slide, that the representatives of community energy, they have to be at the table with all the politicians, and they have to be included into the policy and governance processes. So it's a lot to do, but it, as mentioned, so the transposition of the energy package would be a very good opportunity. Regarding the pandemic, so what is the target? We think maybe it could be on 3 levels. The first one is really like a relief. You need immediate assistance, and now governments are reacting what is correct and great and very important. To have loans and short-time working, for example, but all the instruments, they have to be justified over the long term. And no investments should be invested into, for example, in stranded assets like diesel and petrol cars. And in Germany, there are some rumors that the politicians are thinking about a scrapping premium for cars. So it was a concept after the financial crisis. And we really hope that they do not repeat the mistake of 2008. So that's very important. And so to combine the immediate assistance with conditions, for example, for company meeting the Paris Agreement, meeting the Agenda 2030. So that's the first step, that's a relief. And the second could be the recovery. And here we have a lot of solutions with community energy. For Corona, we see that we are struggling because we do not have the right medicine, but with energy communities, so we have some medicine.
So, Katharina, seems we lost you. Is it a problem on my side? Is anybody else can hear me?
Yes, but she is frozen, it seems.
Okay. Well, I assume that she was anyway coming to the end of her presentation. So I would already ask then our next speaker to get ready, which is Josep Puig from Barcelona. Very good. Welcome, Pep. Welcome to Barcelona. And we know Barcelona is not simply Spain, so you're going to speak about the situation in Catalonia and in Spain, where, as Stilke already pointed out, community projects are not as common as in some parts of Central and Northern and Western Europe, but things are moving. We're pleased about that. And unless Katharina is coming back, I would then suggest that we hand over to you.
Well, I'm very sorry, Stefan. That's really, I think also the Corona is too much for my computer.
Okay, you're back. That's good.
Normally I have my backup with my mobile. Yeah, but I'm here and I will share my screen again and apologize. So.
Now you're here twice. Okay.
Yeah. I'm twice. Okay, so that's my excuse.
But I see you are the same person, just
okay. Yes, that's
frozen picture. Mm-hmm. Good. Then briefly back to you.
Yes. Can I share my screen again? Yeah, I can. Mm-hmm. Yep. So it's here. So the point was that,
if I may ask you to come to the conclusion, because we're
yes,
lost a bit time now.
I will do so. So it's the second is really the recovery, and here we have a lot of ideas. So to stop the solar cap, for example, to have a clear regulation and a good definition on energy communities, on wind energy. So to solve all the points I have mentioned before, and to start really with the plans, they're already being on the cards, because we have good plans on energy efficiency potentials in buildings. So here we have very good ideas which could be implemented immediately. And the third one is a reform, really, so to have to increase the structural resilience. So that's the bigger picture. So to see that to have the push to a transition, so a systematic shift. And finally, that's the point, so to have to use the crisis, not to waste the crisis, but to use the crisis, so to have this relief, recovery, and reform a systematic change. And as already mentioned, so the good news is we have cost-effective renewables. We have technologies allowing citizens to get involved. We can speed up immediately and to start already planned climate investments. Power communities are established and experienced, and we use and transpose the energy package. So that's to enable the space. We need supportive and ambitious policy and regulation. And here we also see the picture of the Sustainable Development Goals, because we see with Power Community, we meet a lot of SDGs and come up with a resilient and sustainable society. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I think your last words were almost kind of concluding what we're talking about here. I just wrote down, use the crisis for systematic change. I think that's indeed what we need to do. So, Katharina, thanks